Hi, we are back and welcome. Thank you for joining us for this DocLands Documentary Film Festival presentation. You just watched Can You Bring It? Bill T. Jones and D-Man in the Waters. If you're like me, you probably needed a few moments to exhale from this extremely powerful documentary. And I'm really excited to be in this space with Rosalynde LeBlanc, the director and producer of this documentary, and Tom Hurwitz, the co-director and director of photography. Thank you both for joining us in conversation today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having
Great
us.
to be here.
Excellent. So what struck me about the documentary, Rosalynde, I'd love to start with you, is how much you were able to pack in to a short amount of time, how much education I received and how clearly that was presented. You ran through the biography of Bill T. Jones, kind of the timeline of his career. You talk about 3 different productions of D-Man in the Waters. You used 3 different performances, 2 of them using archival footage. You talk about the AIDS epidemic and you help us understand the frame of mind of all of the cast members. When you presented this documentary, what was your elevator pitch? How did you get all of that into kind of a streamlined presentation of your vision?
Well, okay. So to start off, I think I have to go back to the original seed of the idea. So with the understanding that I'm, what I brought to this was the fact that I was a dancer with Bill T. Jones for many years. I'm still in the dance world. And I wanted to tell the story. I had never made a film before. I'm not a career filmmaker. And I knew enough to know that I needed excellence and expertise. And so I reached out to Tom. We knew each other from 1995 when he was a cinematographer on another piece of Bill T. Jones's called Still Here, in which I was dancing. And I reached out to Tom knowing that, I kind of have the knowledge of the story, but I need the filmic expertise. So when you talk about the elements of all of these confluent stories coming together and the density of that and the richness of that, I really have to say that that was not necessarily my vision, quote unquote. That is evidence of a very fine-tuned collaboration with Tom and his understanding of, first of all, how to make a film, because he's been in documentary film, for over 30 years. But then also how to translate what it is I understood of the story and understood of the dance, the embodied memory that I had of doing the dance. How do you then translate that to the screen?
Yeah.
And what is that story? There are many stories inside of there, but what are the pathways that we need to tell at this moment? So all of that was a collaborative effort. It was not inside my head, and needed to come out. It was just, how do we do this? So yeah, that's the beauty of collaboration. And I think that's part of the richness of this film, is that behind that is a rich collaboration between Tom and
I. Thank you. Tom, I would love to get your input on your remembrance and kind of how that conversation went, the complexity and the process of, being the filmmaker expert in the space, coming together with clearly an extremely creative person who has a passion for a story, and then going to the editing process. Can you help our audience understand
Sure.
how this came together so beautifully for the both of you in this documentary?
Sure. Well, the one thing to say is that you don't do a documentary like this without both of you having a deep passion for the story.
Mm.
I had Roz's passion was longer because she had been wanting to make this film for longer than I did. But when she asked me to come on the project with her, her idea was to make a kind of shorter film with a limited, more limited scope.
Mm.
Once we had shot the interviews of the original company, which was the first thing that we did together, it was clear to me that this was an extraordinarily rich story. Where it was going to go and how it was going to come together as a documentary, neither of us were really quite sure. We just knew. Roz, I think, took my word for it that this is going to make a feature documentary, and then we both kind of hung on and to the sled going down the hill, and made the film that came together, which was not. I mean, as in all documentaries that of this kind, some of them are telling an established story of something that happened in the past, but that wasn't this. This was a very rich piece of material about which we both felt very, very passionate. The history we were passionate about, that is the AIDS crisis, the resonance of the AIDS crisis into what was happening now, was also something that we felt a lot of passion about. The work itself and the power of the work itself and the ability of art to resurrect life.
Yeah. Wow.
Is what we saw looking at this piece, and the way the dancers described their experience in making it as a company that had been devastated by the AIDS crisis at the time and were really hurting. More than hurting, the company was heartsick, and Bill was heartsick, having just lost his partner 3 months before, and so Arnie Zane. So this was a group of people to whom tragedy had been visited over and over again in the previous couple of years, and now was time for them to make a work that Bill conceived of that could, but they made it all together, that could put them together as creators and as rich people. So we saw that in the beginning, and it just was clear that the story had to be told. It was kind of something central to a human experience.
Yeah.
I don't want to go on too long, but at any rate, that was, and so the collaboration just merged at that point. Roz asked the questions in the interviews. I conceived of how to shoot the dance when we filmed the company, and then we built the film. As it went along. The big decision, I got to say, Roz can talk about this too, was the decision to add the struggle of the students. Of the student company, to understand the experience of the dance enough to really do it, because you can't do it if you don't feel it. And how to get to those feelings and bring them out of themselves was their struggle. And we came to the feeling that we couldn't tell the story without the struggle, seeing the struggle of a modern company.
So that actually is going to be one of my next questions, but I have a few follow-ups actually. Yeah, I want to know more about kind of the multi-generational aspect, that you highlighted in the film. But something struck me, and I just really have to go back to that for a moment. Rosalynde, you said this is your first film. Is this your first feature or your first film, period?
First film, period. Yes.
Wow.
I just need to say that Roz has the steepest learning curve of anybody I've ever worked with. She learned how to produce a film so fast that that it was really extraordinary. I mean, somewhere into the first year of our shooting, she organized a theater at Purchase College of the Arts in New York, a theater, a stage crew. We organized a film crew, an entire company of dancers, and everything that goes into operating that huge unit, 4 or 5 shooting days. Mm-hmm. My mouth was open, and I knew after we did that, and it came off really pretty much without a hitch, right? I mean, yeah. it was absolutely amazing. When we were done, we kind of looked at each other and said, "Did we really do this?" I knew that we'd make a film, a really good film. So,
Rosalynde, I would just like to just go into the fact that this is, your first production, your first role as a director and a producer of a film. Are you at all surprised, or what are your emotions around how the film is being received?
Thrilled by how it's being received, really beyond my wildest dreams in a way, although I will say also not beyond my wildest dreams, because I knew the story was so rich. I knew that because I feel like I came of age with this story. You know, I met Bill when I was 19. And I was in the studio. So let's see, when I was 19, I guess it was just 2 years after Damien Aquavella had passed away, and he is D-Man. So his memory is very fresh. It was maybe 4 years after Arnie had died. So his memory was still very fresh. And that original company that is in the film, that original cast of D-Man in the Waters was largely still there. So I was dancing with them. So all of these stories that you're hearing in the film were really the oral history that I was around at 19 when I walked into the studio with that group of people. And so I knew that this is not this is not your typical dance studio. Like, these people have been through hell and back, and it's in their bodies, and they're making work from that place, and they're performing from that place. And that's so yes, I knew the story had that power. So in a way, no, I'm not surprised that it is doing as well as it is, although I'm absolutely thrilled and also humbled by it. It is my first film, and I will say that in all honesty, I feel more connected or more identified as a producer of this film than necessarily a director. I think that as a director, my contribution was the ability to, because I knew the dance, I could say, this part of the dance is important. We have to figure out how to, even though this may be downstage, there's a duet that's going on upstage that's important. How do we shoot that duet? This is the feeling of a belly slide. How do we, and this is what we want to capture. So, and this person is going to go from stage left to stage right. And when they run off stage, they're going to grab their towel and mop off before they run back on. Like, in a sense, since I knew that from the inside, I could kind of provide that level of direction to Tom, and then he was translating that to the rest of the film crew. Then once I was in the film, I couldn't be a director anymore. I that decision, like Tom said, that decision to kind of focus on the student learning meant that I was then in the film.
Right.
And, the minute that, and I think I probably even said to you, Tom, the minute we started filming in the studio and I was teaching, I was like, 100% of my attention is now going to be teacher and on my students. I can't, you know, I have to kind of leave the film hat off. You know, otherwise there would always be a conflict of interest, and my attention to my students would be divided. So we knew that going in. I think that my real contribution as a producer, though, is the one that I'm most proud of just being able to have this idea as really a pipe dream in my head in 2012 of thinking, wouldn't it be great if it were possible to make a film about this dance? And then now sitting here, you know, with the film as an actual thing out in the world that will last forever, and the reception that it's getting, I think that's really where the pride and the identity is for me.
I think that that's extremely exciting, and thank you so much for just putting this work out there that clearly you are invested in as your like your history, your own personal history, your career as a dancer, and just like the history of the art and your personal relationship with Bill T. Jones. There's just like so much going on there for you personally. It feels like that. I love that the reception it is what it is, and I'm so excited for the whole of the audience to see the film, not just festival lovers and nerds like people like us here in the industry. I want to ask another question about your role as a teacher in this space, and also Tom, there's going to be a follow-up question for you. So you were 19 when you first met Bill T. Jones, which puts you at an age that's very close to the students that you have featured in this documentary. So there's two different things. You personally as a dancer in your career, how do you feel like you're able to connect with those students, knowing that that was the age that you were getting into this this piece with, but then also as a filmmaker, what made it clear to you that that was an aspect of the story that needed to be told? And then Tom, how did that collaboration come together to putting that to screen?
So yes, I think on some level there is that I could really relate to my students, them being 19 and for the most part as a median age, and also my experience. But then there was this other way in which I really couldn't relate to them, because I think it was, and this is really, I mean, you say, why make this film? This is, I think, gets to the heart of it for me, is that you know, coming of age at the height of the AIDS crisis was hugely influential for me, especially as a dancer, especially at Purchase College just outside of New York City. So what that really meant was that I would, you know, we would go away for winter or spring break or summer break, and then come back, and one of our teachers was, you know, 50 pounds lighter, you know, and emaciated, and wearing real and showing real illness and lesions and things like that. Was my experience, and that was the experience of the group of students that I went to school with. So to be that young, to also kind of come into a sexual maturity at that time, it was very real. You know, HIV and AIDS was very much a part of what it meant to be a college student in the early 90s. And so there was an urgency that was part of my college experience that I didn't feel with them. And that's where we couldn't relate. The urgency was really about my teachers dying.
Yeah.
And more than one of my teachers is dying visibly. So if we're going to do this, we got to do this now. The clock is literally ticking, you know. So that energy was really there, and also the fear, you know, just the fear and you know, the seriousness of what we were doing. You know, dance was, it was serious play, as they
Right.
say. You know,
Yeah.
so in that way, I couldn't relate to my students. They were much more complacent at that time than I was, and that was part of my frustration, I think, with them. In terms of realizing that that part needed to be in the film, I was probably the person who dragged my feet the most about that. We were doing feedback screenings and, you know, just having people kind of look at our raw footage and getting feedback. And a lot of people said, you know, what about that aspect of teaching the piece? You know, what about Roz's relationship to the work? Like, where is that in the story? And I just kept saying, no one wants to see that. That's not interesting. You know, the history is where it's at, you know, let's, you know. And so I was kind of kicking and screaming about that even into when we started filming. I and
Yeah,
and maybe
if I can kind
a
of
little
pick it
bit
up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Roz was very doubtful about it.
Oh, wow, yeah.
To me, I just felt that whatever the drama in that classroom, and you know, Roz and I had spent a lot of time together, but I'd never seen her teach really.
Mhm.
I just knew that it would be that she'd be a great teacher, but I hadn't really seen her teach. That was part of the first days of shooting, was just to see whether this was going to work. And so we began, and I, you know, I knew that if we got it, that this would make the film general. This would make the film talk about things way bigger than just what had happened in the past. Not that that was anything that was hugely important, but that would explode the ideas in the film. So we, you know, we started with the auditions, and after the first hour and a half of teaching, I knew from what I saw through the camera that Roz was going to carry this part of the film. That her heart was, when she taught, her heart was so out there and so kind of beautiful to see on screen, that this was going to be an extremely important part of the film, and it turned out to be much more important than I even thought it would be.
Yeah, as an educator, I really am a sucker for multi-generational conversations, and it definitely was an element of the film that you know, I felt students are gonna relate to, and I'm just like so excited to get this out into schools, performing arts schools. I think this was a really special documentary, and I'm so excited that both of you have taken the time to chat with us today. Rosalynde LeBlanc, thank you so much. Tom Hurwitz. Rosalynde, do you have any last thoughts for young dancers who are thinking about potentially higher education in the arts or in dance? Any last minute kind of advice for students that are in that space while we still have you here right now?
do it. Dance is incredible. Yes, go for it. That's my advice.
Just go for it.
Yes.
And
All right.
while dance and learning dance is the logical place for this film to settle in some way or another, it's really speaking to anybody. I mean, it's a film really for anybody, because creativity is part of the human condition. It's part of who we are as people. And it's in the making, in the creative action, that we give birth to ourselves again. That's what the film's really about, is about a rebirth through creativity.
Thank you for closing,
Hallelujah.
Tom. Creativity, passion, community, history, all of it came together so wonderfully. Thank you so much for joining us. And for the audience, please check out the rest of the films that DocLands has to offer. We appreciate your presence here, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.